it's gone.
Very little that's going to look familiar.
Yeah.
That's the gym?
Wow.
Say what?
I want to take something. Where do we go somewhere?
Final exam is over with? Yes. How do you act? How do you act when final exam is over with?
What is?
Mr. Gentile. That name once inspired fear.
Yeah.
Oh my God, look at how young Michael was.
Oh,
Okay, everybody.
oh my God.
There I am. Oh, you were
Courtney, I got that on camera. I got that on tape, so.
So thank you. Move over deep for 1 second. Thank you everybody in the Buffalo Public School system who agreed to allow us to come and posting our class of 1994 picture.
Welcome back to my channel. My name is Dr. Anwar Yusuf Dunbar. I am the owner of this channel. I am the founder of this channel. I'm also the founder of the Big Words blog site. The information for my blog and all of my social media contact info can be found on the banner for this channel. So please check that out. Today is August 17th, 2019. And the title of this video is my 25th high school reunion and different stations in life, or my 25th high school reunion and why those years matter. I actually intended to make this video about a month or so ago when we had the reunion, but you know, things got busy, and you know, Donald Trump came up, his comments on Baltimore came up, and that whole thing came up, and things just have a way of jumping up and getting in the way of when you want to release and produce certain pieces. So I'm doing it now, and I'm hoping I can get this done on one take because I have to get on a flight later on, and I have a meeting to go to this morning, and I have a birthday coming up next week. So you know, this is a reflective time, and I think it's just a good time to make this video. Let's see, you know, I'm a scientist, but I'm also a storyteller, and I believe in the power of stories, and I think that there's a lot that we can get from stories, and talking about our pasts and talking about our experiences and the people that we know. And so this video is gonna be a bit of a, you know, it's not going to be a STEM video where I'm saying, you know, pharmacology, toxicology, you should learn a science because of this, and this is going to be a bit more of a look back and a reflection, and maybe a bit of a confessional, and just looking back at life and wondering what certain things mean, and even just thinking about things that I would go back and tell my 13-year-old self, you know, 20, 30 years ago. So I was in Atlanta as a jumping off point for this. I was in Atlanta. Gotta make sure I enunciate everything. I was in Atlanta last weekend, and I have 2 younger cousins. One is a sophomore, one is a freshman, and sometimes I don't know if they want to hear what I have to say, but I took them to Starbucks, and just so we could have a cousins chat. And you know, I just basically told them something that my brother said in our family text group, because their father likes to send around, as my mother said, he dotes over them, and so he likes to send around pictures of them, of every part of their life, to the family. And school just started in Atlanta, and so he took a picture of them hugging or standing next to each other out in front of their high school down there in Georgia. And my brother texted basically that those years are going to fly by fast. So that's one of the things that I told them, and I think that's one of the conclusions I'm going to come to at the end of this video. But before I go on, I just want to shout out Coach David Nieves. I don't think he's coaching there anymore. He was from the class of '93. He gave me this shirt. For those of you who don't know, I'm working on a book project about what my time on the Hutch-Tech basketball team taught me about life, success, and failure. And so I went back even when we didn't have reunions, to take a look at the new school now, or the updated school and the gym, and to see what the basketball program was like now. And Coach Nieves was nice enough to have some words with me and even give me some paraphernalia. This shirt says "Get Better Every Day." Our school colors were actually maroon and gold. This is kind of maroon and black, but I wanted to shout him out for that. And yeah, so let's jump in as I'm watching the clock here. So a key focus of my blog and of my channel is education. Scholastic education in addition to life education. All education matters. Financial education, all education. And you know, the high school years I won't say for everybody because they're different for everybody, but from my vantage point, those years are significant because it's your first sample of what the real world is like, in my opinion. Particularly, and it's different for everybody. I went to a larger high school, and there were about 250 students in every class, so I think that's about a little over 1,000 students in the school at one time, and you're coming together with kids from other neighborhoods and other backgrounds, and in some instances different social classes, even if you're the same color and ethnicity. So you're coming together and you have to make new friends, and you're sharing space, and you're socializing together, and you're supposed to be learning together. So my high school was Hutch-Tech High School. It's called, the actual full name was Hutchinson Central Technical High School. And the opening of this video was actually a montage of some shots of the school and some brief shots of some of us gathering in the parking lot the first day of the reunion. I tried not to get everybody's faces, but I just wanted to get a feel for what happens when people get back together after not seeing each other for 10 to 15 years. Some people stay in contact with one another in between reunions, but other folks don't, and they don't see each other except for on social media, if at all. So it's your first sample, in my opinion, of what the real world is like. It's an artificial sample. Everyone is still growing and changing. Some people are more mature physically and mentally when they get there. Some people are still growing and changing and evolving even after they leave. So it's a very interesting crucible and a very interesting snapshot of life, because everyone is at that point. Everyone is growing and evolving and changing, and everyone is different, and people come from different backgrounds. Let's see. So the reunion. So we met back let's see, some of us gathered on Friday, July 19th, I believe that was, at the school to do a tour. And as you could see from the opening footage, the building is H-shaped, and they did a lot of renovations to the building, and in a lot of ways it looks very different than the school that I attended back in the early 1990s. They moved the cafeteria, the gym was expanded, the swimming pool was gutted and completely removed, and it just looks completely different on the inside. So the kids who go there now have a lot of things that we didn't have. Saturday we had a larger gathering at, I believe it was called Big Ditch Tavern, something like that, in downtown Buffalo. And then, you know, we all gathered. Some of us migrated over to another bar over on Chippewa Street, where there are a lot of other bars. But the gathering at Big Ditch Tavern, that was fun. We had a DJ and food, and people were taking pictures and all kinds of things. The goal was to wear something maroon and white. And I'll shout out, I don't think she'll mind, Katrina Arnold from my class, who basically organized the whole thing. She had some help, but she was the ringleader. So the 10th reunion was a little weird. You know, you're 10 years out. No one was established at that point in their careers. I think some folks had gotten married at that point. And a lot of, in a way, a lot of what happened was still fresh. Is still fresh in your minds. If you had some not so pleasant memories from the experience, you know, those are still fresh in your mind 10 years out, or they can be. The 20-year reunion, that was cool. It was a little less weird. And this 25th was cool because everyone was older. Folks had settled in their careers. Some folks, you know, folks were married, divorced. Some of us neither. A lot of folks have children, but everyone was just a little older, more mature, and a lot of the old stuff were just memories now that you could laugh at. Hutch-Tech High School was a STEM school before STEM became a big deal. You had to take an entrance exam to get in, so you couldn't just go to Hutch-Tech. Students majored in building technology, biotechnology. I believe there was a computer technology major, engineering technology, electrical tech, and mechanical technology. I don't know if my brother appreciates this, but I always tell the story that I followed him to Hutch-Tech. A bunch of our relatives went there. Some of my aunts and uncles went to Hutch-Tech, so we had a history of going there. And I saw how proud my relatives were of my brother for getting into Hutch-Tech and going. He and I are 2 years apart. And I said, you know what, well, I want that for myself as well. And I think that Hutch-Tech might have been, I only applied to 2 schools. I think that was Hutch-Tech and I think it was McKinley. And if it wasn't for my brother, I could have easily wound up at one of the other schools in the Buffalo public school system. So I really like to credit going to Hutch-Tech. I like to credit that to my older brother, Amal. So once again, salute to my older brother, Amal. And in Hutch-Tech, it was at that time considered one of the top 2 academic high schools in the Buffalo public school system. Not trying to throw shade at any of the other 12, but yeah, I think it was between us and City Honors. And I was just talking with with a City Honors alum last week at a party, and this gentleman, who I'll call Ben, he, you know, rehashed the rivalry you know, saying that, you know, we were the better high school and Hutch-Tech was number 2. And I think in some regards that's true. In a lot of regards that's true. City honors, it was smaller. It was more intimate, and based upon the people that I knew who went to City honors, it was overall a more focused and driven group. One of the things, and I often think of City honors like being a small college versus us. Our school was much bigger, and a lot of people will tell you, a lot of Hutch-Tech alums will tell you that regardless of the reputation that it had on the outside, a lot of knuckleheads got in. A lot of knuckleheads got in. And I was surprised when I got there what I saw in some of the classmates that I saw there and some of their behaviors. When my brother was a freshman, I think the school had just come off of its National School of Excellence distinction, and that had a lot to do with the classes that were in the school at that time. And let's just say that when I got there, they let in some real characters. So I'll stop at that. But it was a STEM school before STEM, the acronym STEM, became a big deal. When I look back at those years, I think of them as a distinct passageway in time, like a gateway, kind of like in the Star Trek and sci-fi movies when they say we just went through a wormhole. So you go in one side, one way, and you come out on another side. I kind of think of those years as a distinct passageway. Those years, they differed for everybody. Some people look back on those years with joy, while others look back on them with dread and disdain. My mother often said that she would hate to go back and do her high school years over again. For me, it was somewhere in the middle. As the saying goes from, I think it was a Civil War novel, they were the best of times and they were the worst of times. You know, again, you know, you're starting to mature into an adult from middle school, but it's just, and you're maturing physically and mentally, and some kids arrive there with more knowledge and more social skills than others, and that's because of the families they come from. They might have older brothers, older sisters, etc. Maybe both their parents are together, and vice versa. Me and my brother talk about that all the time. We didn't have any older sisters, so a lot of the things about girls and women we kind of had to learn on the fly because there was no one there to kind of teach us. We didn't have a consistent male figure in the home. I keep bringing that up in my videos because I believe that's significant. My parents split when I was 3, and most of my uncles moved away. So we were left to kind of figure out some of those areas, and we were left to navigate some of those areas on our own with varying results. So, you know, kids are starting to grow and mature, and there's a lot that you just don't know. You know, you're still innocent in certain ways, and you're coming together with kids from other backgrounds and other experience levels. Socially, so let's go back to the social aspect. Socially, you know, there's a hierarchy that naturally forms, you know, and my brother often described there being an A crowd, a B crowd, and a C crowd, with the A crowd being the most popular, the B crowd being the next tier, and the C crowd being the unpopular kids or the awkward kids. So there's a natural social hierarchy that forms in most big high schools like that. and it forms for any number of reasons. I think the girls, by nature, have a much different experience than the boys. The most mature girls, when they come into the high school, they're going to be, you know, the more senior guys are going to be hitting on them. But as a younger freshman boy, the older senior girls aren't hitting on you unless you're, you know, you have something really, really distinct about you that they would want. But it's the hierarchy. I'll just call it the hierarchy. That's significant when you go into a little fishbowl or a little crucible or ecosystem like that. And that's, again, not everyone develops the same. So some people enjoy those 4 years more and others don't. And as people, not everyone everyone's still developing. So, you know, some mean things can be said and done to each other. You know, when you're, you know, if you're talking to somebody, if you have a boyfriend or a girlfriend, or if you're on an athletic team, or if something, you know, at that age, a lot of kids lack the maturity to not say mean things and not be mean to each other in certain situations. And I'm being vague there, but I'll just leave that there. When I look back at my journey and where I wound up, it's a bit of a miracle that I got a PhD from the University of Michigan, and that I got my bachelor's, and that I even got into college. I mean, most students from Hutch-Tech, if they wanted to, could go to college. But if you had told me that I would have done what I've done after leaving the school, I probably wouldn't have believed it at the time. If you had told me that I would be registering pesticides and making cancer decisions on chemicals that are going on the food supply, if you had told me that I would have published in molecular pharmacology and drug metabolism and disposition, I'm not sure that I would have believed it. And the reason is that I was a mediocre student in high school. I was very unfocused, and I did not completely appreciate what I was there for, first and foremost, and that was to be a student. And I spent a lot of time, and I wasted enough schoolwork just to get by. So I think my 4-year average was about an 81 or an 82%. But I wasted a lot of time thinking about social acceptance, girls, and wanting to have sex, because, and not knowing how to do any of that. And you know, a lot of the boys were talking about that all the time, and I guess that's natural for boys at that age to just talk about sex and who they're having sex with and who they're hitting and who they're doing this with and who they're doing that with. And you know, that's cool if you are, but if you're a kid who wants to and doesn't know how to, that can lead to depression, that can lead to a lot of insecurity, it can lead to a lack of focus, it can lead to a bunch of different things. So, and so, but that's a door that swings both ways. And so I often look back and I say to myself, okay, well, if I knew everything I know in those areas now, you know, maybe I would have had a baby or something like that when I was a teen. Maybe I would have gotten into trouble in other ways. So while it was difficult to deal with back then, you know, it could be, in a way, it could be a blessing that I didn't know what I was doing in those areas back then. But this is another reason why I'm so outspoken and why I'm an advocate of manhood, because I do believe there are certain things that only men can teach and pass on to boys. And if boys are left to figure things out on their own, they're going to stumble, and it's going to be a bit of a rough road. And that's what it was for me and my brother. Let's see. So I always did enough schoolwork just to get by. It was enough to get into a college. My first year of school was at the SUNY College at Brockport, which is outside of Rochester, New York. I got a very mediocre SAT score. Didn't qualify for any scholarships or anything that would get my tuition paid. So again, I just limped along academically while I was there at Hutch-Tech. I played some basketball there, which was an up and down experience. That experience taught me a lot about how to succeed in life going forward. It taught me a lot about perseverance. It taught me a lot about character. It taught me a lot about people. It taught me a lot about teamwork. And it taught me a lot about focusing on your goal. And it taught me a lot about change. You know, things in life, they change. They don't always stay the same. And it taught me a lot about dreams. And sometimes we go into things with very lofty dreams about how we want things to go and how we want things to turn out. But sometimes life takes us in very different directions. And sometimes some dreams you need multiple people with the same dream to put their hands in all at once to make the dream come true. And if you don't have that, the dream's not going to come true. And I'm working on a book project about that right now. Overall, I didn't understand until the end that that little high school fishbowl or crucible was temporary. And as you get older, you realize just how short those 4 years are. When I look back now, it was just a snapshot in time. When I was in it, it seemed like it was taking forever, because I couldn't see what was coming next. Before I conclude, I want to show you just what our school seal was. Coach Nieves gave me this bag, and this is the seal of Hutch-Tech High School. So, and I didn't embrace these when I was there because I limped along as a student, but the top of the triangle here says knowledge. This side says skill, and this side says power. Knowledge, skill, power. So these are things that I think about when I look back at those 4 years. If I could go back to my 13-year-old self, the way I spoke to my cousins last weekend, I would say that, life is a marathon, and it's not a track meet. And I'm going to credit my classmate Greg, who was in my lab at the University of Michigan when I was doing my PhD. We talked about that a lot, that life is a marathon, it's not a track meet. So it's a person may win the sprint, but they may not win the overall race. And life is the same way. Life went on beyond those 4 years, and everyone had experiences after those 4 years. Some people had a good time during those 4 years and then struggled afterwards, and some people struggled during those 4 years and then excelled afterwards. So it's different for everybody. Life is it's a marathon, not a sprint. Everyone grows and develops differently. So not everyone is the same. And that bit of advice, that bit of knowledge and wisdom would have really helped me out when I was there. And that's something that I've seen in the adult world as an undergraduate, as a graduate student, and now as a professional. I've seen that as well. Not everyone is the same. Not everyone arrives at a particular destination with the same attributes, and everybody grows and matures differently. It's very important to keep in mind. Often the people who seem to have it going on the most are actually insecure and are dealing with things in their own lives at home. You never know. There were, I had two buddies that I hung out with at Hutch-Tech, but I didn't really know everyone else that well. And it turned out that there were people who had things going on at home. They didn't have the most stable home lives, and they had a lot of, their home lives were very tumultuous. But most everybody was going through something at some point. And you don't know that unless you're close to them and unless they share it with you. So you know, it's like the iceberg. You can only see 10% of it, but there's a whole bottom of it below the water. So you have to learn to look below the surface of what's going on. And unless you're really close with a person, oftentimes you can't see what's below the water. And then finally, I would tell myself to learn from the other ethnic groups. Buffalo at that time was a segregated city, and many people would argue that it still is. And during those years, I mostly associated with black people. And that had a lot to do with the way I was socialized. That had a lot to do with just my perception of the world at that time. And it wasn't until later, when I got to graduate school at the University of Michigan, when I was in the lab with Asians and, you know, I had white colleagues and colleagues from Bulgaria and Korea and Thailand and Eastern Europe and all over the place, that I realized, wow, there's a lot I could learn from people who don't look like me. And you know, you have things in common, and then you have things that are unique about one another. But at that time, I was just caught in my own little bubble. And that's based upon how I was socialized, and that's based upon my perception of the world at that time. So with that, I have to run. I hope you enjoyed this video, this little retrospective, this little confessional about you know, my 25th high school reunion. It was good to see everybody, and those years are important. They matter, and it's a very critical station in life, and one that in some ways sets the stage for the others. I wrote a piece about, I think it's called Challenging Stereotypes and Misconceptions in Academic Achievement. And at the end of the piece talks about my perceptions of the other ethnic groups and how academically inclined they are and what their academic abilities are. And at the end of the piece, I talk about how in the United States you can underperform in high school and still excel later on, versus countries like China where you have to excel from an early age or else you'll be triaged to go do manual labor in the factory. And that's another big thing I think about when I look back at those years, and that's that I didn't perform strongly academically in high school, but I was able to rebound later on in life and do something with myself. So in the United States, we're really fortunate because we have second chances. So I'm going to conclude here. I've talked long enough. It was good to see everyone. Will I go to the 30th? Well, I'll cross that bridge when it gets here. It will depend on what's going on in my life at that time, and it will depend on what's happening. So with that, I will conclude. Please like the video. Please share it. Please share if you have a young person in your circle who's going through some of those struggles. Please pass on some of the themes and the gems of wisdom that I shared here. So please like the video, please share it, and please subscribe to my channel. And always remember that your attitude determines your altitude. By the way, that saying, I got that while I was at Hutch-Tech. It came from my first basketball coach, Dr. Kenneth Leon Jones, and he told us a lot of things. He gave us a lot of motivational sayings and quotes and speeches, but that's the one I remember the most. Your attitude determines your altitude. Take care, and I will talk to you later. Bye-bye.